looks like I was into the okay. So that my CV looks like I was into the traditional analytical chemistry, that his field was analytical, but it was bioanalytical, more like RNAs, viral RNA, these, exosomes and all those things. And I was like, oh, no problem, that I was willing to be, flexible.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, okay, if that's the case, I should go ahead and use his name. So what I'm just trying to say is that, number one, with research direction, especially when you're looking out for scholarships and fundings, you just have to be flexible. You're not the one that is making the money available, right? So you have to be flexible. What is in demand? What are people really, looking out for? Also, when it comes to what is in demand and what are people really looking out for, this varies from country to country, from my research, and it also varies from even university to university. A typical example is for Japan as a whole. Japan is like kind of, known for, or is big on, techie things, AI and all those kind of things. My university particularly is one of the biggest university for anything science, especially grad science, right? So this gives you a view of, okay, this is the kind of, thing that this university is into. Then you now check their website. I think one major mistake people make is just you're looking at, let's say you're looking towards applying to Tokyo University, Japan, and you have already drafted this unmovable, unshakable statement of purpose or research proposal. Nobody should add, nobody should remove. It is what you were brought to this world to do. Nobody can tell you otherwise. But you haven't even gone to the website of the university, gone to Department of Chemistry, example, or Department of Microbiology. I know this is biological breakout room. Go to the Department of Microbiology or chemistry. Go to the professors that are in that bio field. That, like for me now, I'm in chemistry, so I go to Department of Chemistry. Now, under chemistry, I'm definitely going to see physical chemistry. I'm going to see organic chemistry. I'm going to see natural chemistry. I'm going to see inorganic. I'm going to see polymer chemistry. But I'm looking out for bio now, right? Bioanalytical chemistry, and then I now see maybe 4 professors or 5 professors in bioanalytical chemistry. And the next thing is, what are these people looking into? What are they researching into? What is their area of specialty? You're not going to come and come with a brand new research area. They will not have to start buying you a whole new instrument, buying you new table, just because one brand new student is coming from a brand new country. It really happens like that. It's not magic. Yes, most of these instruments cost millions of yen, thousands of dollars. So you have to put yourself, it's more like this thing people say, preparation meeting opportunity. The opportunity is there, but you have to be strategic about your positioning. Go to the university website. It never really makes sense that you are applying to a university and you've not visited the website of the department. It should shape whatever it is you're right now. I'm not saying you have to just go with the flow. A typical example is, for me, one thing I was very sure is I didn't want, sorry, please tell me when to stop.
Oh, okay,
One thing I was very sure about is I didn't want to do quantum chemistry. I was sure that even in my second, third word, I didn't want to do quantum chemistry. I know I didn't want to do polymer. Now, I understand that when it comes with funding, a lot of times we say things like, go where the funding is. Yes, go where the funding is, but at least let there be a little passion too. We're going where the funding is. So I'm not saying that because you want it to be this particular school and maybe it's only quantum, you now force your passion, you now force your research proposal, and then you come, and that's where frustration starts. Life starts after scholarship. That's the honest truth. That's where mental health starts declining, because you don't like what you're doing at all. Now, for my case, why I said flexibility is that in Nigeria, right, analytical chemistry is just the traditional, or measure this accuracy, measure this water, and all those things. But I didn't even know that analytical chemistry had the bioanalytical chemistry. I didn't even know that chemistry could deal with RNAs, medicine, drug design. I didn't know that. So that's where flexibility doesn't mean you have to now completely change your passion. It just means you have to be more open-minded about what is in that area you are looking out for. So just go to the department, go to the school website. Even if I understand that for some scholarships, right, it's not particular just about the university. You're looking at a country scholarship, which could be a bit difficult, right? So how do you narrow down comes into question. At least just, I know that some of those scholarships, at least I know from MEX, they will actually ask you which universities you have in mind in Japan. Before you put a university in mind, the same thing still applies. Just peruse, just go through the website, the departments, the professors, there are few. To be honest with you, some of the websites are not very updated. Some of their websites are not very updated. Some people's maybe last website update is coming maybe 2019 or 2020, and maybe they have evolved out of that particular field because yeah. So check their link, yes, good and fine. Also check their publications. If there is anything, any professor never fails to update on their website, is their publication, is their bragging rights, is their publication. So if you feel confused, like, oh, this website looks like the last time they added something to it, maybe you are checking the research about page. Yeah, that's the about page. If it looks like, oh, it's long ago that it was updated, check their publication. Publication will always tell you where their money is.
Yeah, thank you, Chioma. Yeah, she said it. Do your research, research the university. For me, I have a little bit of a different story. I started my master's in 2014, and I was trying to get admission in 2013. I didn't know about this issue of writing professors. I was just applying to the universities. I knew I was coming to South Africa. I was prepared. I got all my all my necessary certificates from Nigeria before I left. So I came, applied for the South African Qualification Authority certificate. Then I started applying to schools that I I was getting rejections and rejections and rejections. So the last school I applied, which is the institution where I currently work at, I got a little bit of a rejection again. I did microbiology from Nigeria, and I knew I wanted to be in university that year. But I just had this conviction that I was supposed to be going for my master's in 2014. So what I did was I came to the institution, I went to the department, and I spoke with the head of department, and she said, no, it's not like you didn't qualify. It's because we are short on funding. But because I didn't have the knowledge before, like now that you have to write the professors, seek a prospective PI before you come. And that was when I got into food science. That was when my story changed from microbiology to food science. And before I started applying, I wanted to go into food microbiology. So when the opportunity came for food science, I was open-minded enough to take the opportunity. I didn't say, oh, it has to be microbiology or nothing. So I said, food science, I think I can manage. So I went to the department, submitted my transcript, had to do like a change and everything. And the head of department sat me down, interviewed me, looked at my transcripts and said, you've done most of the basic sciences that we do in food science, except for a few courses that you've not taken, but definitely we can admit you. And that was how I started my journey in food science. So like Chioma said, being flexible enough to know that when an opportunity presents itself, you can take it. Not just like, no, it's either this box or nothing. So like she said, chemistry, but she was like, I didn't know anything about biochemistry, bioanalytical chemistry, but she was willing to go into that. So being flexible enough, not like just throw yourself at anyone and say, oh, whatever. Then by the time you start the research itself, you start getting frustrated and said, I wasn't even supposed to be here in the first place. So being flexible enough made me transition microbiology into food science. And that was how my journey began. It took a lot of like doing extra reading, attending extra classes. And I saw that I found it very interesting. Even while doing microbiology back in Nigeria, I've always liked the food aspect because it's something I could relate to. I see food every day. I eat it. I'm eating and I'm remembering the things lecturer taught us in class about food safety and all that. I started applying it. So when the opportunity presented itself for me to migrate to food science, I took it. And I can say the rest is history today. So being flexible enough, like Chioma said, now researching. check the institution, and also look at the current publications from such lecturers, and you see that, oh, this professor is into this. I love this particular aspect my course and I want to go into that. Then you write to them and you also see what you can do about that. So I think we covered that. Yes,
I think I want to say, based off from your story, right, where you said food science, it was called food science, but you studied microbiology. I think another common mistake people make is name tags. Is tags. You know, there's this rigidity that comes with naming. So I see people saying I see some tweets, on Twitter, people's like, oh, I studied, maybe someone posted a scholarship opening and it started, there is an opening in this PI for, let's say, bioanalytical chemist. And then you see someone reply the tweet like, oh, I studied microbiology, there are no opportunities for us. And I'm just like, yo, it's just name. If you check most times, you do similar thing. It's just name. Like, I've realized in this part of the world, like, they call things differently. I have someone that came from China, right? And his first degree is microbiology. And he's working in as a bioanalytical chemistry. I know better to see an opportunity in biological science and say, oh, I'm a chemist. It doesn't bother me. No, I fit into that. My field also cuts across that. Your field cuts across, my field cuts across analytical, it cuts across chemistry, cuts across industrial chemistry. This is my first degree. So what I'm trying to say is, don't let the name of your course make you rigid. That you studied genetics and biotechnology does not mean that the scholarship that will come for you would be named genetics. And biotechnology. Sometimes the scholarship that would cut across your field could come as bioanalytical chemistry. And when you come over, that's one thing people fail to also understand is it's not a means. How do I explain? People see things as an end in itself, forgetting that some things are a means to an end. Now, when you now come, right, with your genetics and biotechnology, this is an example, genetics and biotechnology degree, you can now talk with your PI, you can find a way, I have a background in this, so this, you bring a middle ground, and before you know it, it's still related. So don't let that, for example, another example, you studied medicine and surgery, and then you see a scholarship in public health. It still matters, it still cuts across your field. So don't let your name box you. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, we have a question. Okay, Mom. We have a question in the chat.
Okay. Yeah. How do you build expertise or basic knowledge in a field you flexibly chose? How do you get started with the basics? Okay, I'll speak on that. Let me just, because we have people from different fields here, we'll speak to a number of things. And let me start from where Chioma stopped. You hear of public health, and it's quite interesting that now these days I've met with young people that I speak to, and I tell them that if I'm to speak to the younger Shay, there are some things I will not do. There are some advice I would listen to. And let me start from there. My expertise is broad, and I've been to, even though I started with biochemistry, I can tell you I've mingled in so many things right now, and quite a number of them I'm enjoying. If you studied biological sciences in your first degree, don't look down on public health. If you studied environmental sciences in your first degree, don't look down on public health. If you studied mathematics in your first degree, don't look down on public health. If you studied pharmacy in your first degree, don't look down on public health. Because let me tell you something, I tell young people now, don't just do anything. The number of staff or employees universities can take, academics, is very limited until a professor dies or leaves before it becomes your turn. I've been to Finland, and I've been to Italy and several other places, and I've seen somebody doing a postdoc in their 14th year, and I'm like, what are you waiting for? That she can't get a permanent or tenure position, like they call it, until a professor either retires or dies or leaves. And so my first thought was like, academia, the space for permanent employment in academia is so what can you do? So I speak to people that before you get into postgrad, make sure that what you want to do, you can get into either academia or industry comfortably. Because then you are not limited to where your opportunities are after postgrad. I think I'm talking about the future now, but what you do now will determine what will happen in future, right? So I'm talking from that point of view. So before you say, I think most of us are Nigerians here. There's this thing going around that is called, they call Japa. Don't just say you just want to leave. Make sure when you are living with sense in your head. I just don't want to go anywhere. Because if you go anywhere, then you become a liability in future. I would not lie to you. You understand? So before you think of anything, fine. The first thing down is I want to leave. Or where do you want to leave to? What do you want to do where you go? And look at the prospects of what you are choosing to do. Do you understand? Because if you don't think about all these things that might affect you in the future, then there will be a problem. So I tell people now, don't be limited in your thoughts. Think as broad as you can, because if you think as broad as you can, then there might be opportunities for you. Because I tell people now that if I'd spoken to my younger self 10 years ago, after I finished, well, not 10 years ago, 12, 13 years ago, after I finished PhD, I would have gone straight to do an MSc in public health. Because there is no way you would go after you have an MPH. No way you would go after you finish your MPH that you would not get a job. Do you understand? So there are so many things that you would think of, because I can see quite a number of people are interested in public health and are also pharmacists. So I would tell people who are pharmacists, don't just think of going to work in a pharmacy shop or a company. Think of the regulatory aspect of pharmacy, because there is money in regulatory aspect of pharmacy and there are jobs. If you go online now and you search for regulatory affairs jobs, you will see there are quite a number of them, either as a regulatory pharmacist or as a regulatory scientist. So there are so many things that we should think of before you get to this point of scholarship or grants. Do you understand? Look at what the opportunities currently are and think of, will I get a job when I'm done? Academia can employ so much, or unless a professor dies or leaves or anything, you will not get promoted to a tenure position. Do you understand? So let me now go back to the lady that made the first question was, how do you build expertise or knowledge? So if you're a fresh graduate, so let's start from the basics. You're a fresh graduate and you just finished and you want to get into the master's studies. For most PIs and professors and mentors or whoever it is you're going to work under, their expectation is that you do not know anything, because that is it. You do not know anything. They are supposed to be your building block, because everything you learned as an undergrad would 99% of the time not be useful for a master's degree, because it's just basic knowledge. So so you have to be strategic in who you want to be the first person that will start building your career, building your life, who your mentor is, your foundation, because they are going to be your foundation, and who the person is very important. So if who that person is going to teach you the things you need to know. That is if the person is good. So something else I would say is, don't just look for any mentor. Just because I want to get out, I will go anywhere. I will work with anybody. People are sadists. People are sadists. I'm not going to listen much, but just make sure the person you're going to is sane. and has humanity in them, it is very important. Decode that. If you're applying to anybody, after you apply to the person, if the list of his current students or her current students are online, send a private message to them. I'm applying to this person. Who is she? What is she like? Because it's in those spaces that you get people letting out their frustrations. I follow quite a group of academics on Twitter, and I've read what they say, and I'm like, they said, before you jump into a fire, there's this proverb or something that you look, and make sure you're not jumping into fire, because literally you get burnt. And being burnt is depression as a postgrad. Being burnt is depression. And it has led quite a number of people to suicidal thoughts. So know exactly what you want to do. And make sure that it is not just first come, first serve, because this person said, yes, I'm going to jump. Who is this person that said yes to you? What is he or she like? So that is something else that you should look into. Dr. Toyin, are you looking at the comments? Because I'm trying to see if you can fix these things.
Yes, you're very true. Like what she said about reaching, I've read so many stories on Twitter, like what she said about reaching out to current students of that professor to just have a feel of what it's like to work with that professor. So it's also important, because in your post-grad journey, your mental health is key. If you're not mentally okay, forget research. So if you're good in your mental space, you know that you can push ahead and do research. We have a question in the chat box for Chioma. So after you speak, there's a question specifically for you about Japan.
Okay, I must have missed that because I logged in and out. I logged out and came back.
So after you say what you say, you attend to the question.
All right, thank you. So in addition to what Dr. Luashe said, right, about expertise, she was very correct. Another thing I always tell people is make use of your NYSC. When I see all these Twitter bans about NYSC as scam, I don't usually add mouth, because I know that it wasn't, as in, I don't know. What do I mean? Be strategic. I know how the country can be, right? But sometimes with the goal in mind, you have to choose a strategic placing over the place they will pay you, maybe whatever. Now, I had the option from Unilag, or do you want to go to, because it was the same professor that was in charge of the Central Research Lab, that was actually, she's a professor in chemistry. And I had that option of, do you want to be in the chemistry department just as how they used to just keep maybe G, or just be photocopy for me, buy biscuit for me, or do you want to be in the Central Research Laboratory? Now, I know that with the chemistry department, there's that flex with, I'm in the chemistry department. But because I knew that I was on a scholarship journey, and I knew what the impact of just putting as in research, Central Research Laboratory, I knew the impact it would give to how it would boost my CV. I immediately told them that don't worry about the Department of Chemistry. I want to go to the Central Research Lab. So what I'm trying to say is, be strategic about your placement. If you have that choice, if that choice comes to you of, your uncle so office, you don't need to do anything. You just be coming, signing during Thursday, CDS, and you go back, or a place that is kind of related to the things you have in mind, please, by all means, make use of that 1 year and get that experience. Apart from the experience you will get, because like Dr. Loashe rightly said, it may not count, but apart from the experience, it shapes your mind. I was able to meet a lot of graduate students in that lab. I was able to see how frustrating graduate program can be. It was in that lab I made up my mind that I say praying towards having a good PI, because I had people saying terrible things about their PIs. I knew someone that was doing PhD for several years, like she was lamenting. Like, I saw the impact firsthand. I met people, I networked, and then I knew how research could be frustrating. So I was low-key prepared for what I'm seeing, although this is the escalated one, but I was low-key prepared because we'll go to the lab in the morning, we'll come back in the evening, we'll run samples, we have company. So try as much as possible. It's not every time you place money over some things. If you can, by all means, choose something that will help you get your end. Just be strategic in your NYSC.
Thank you. Speak to Portia's question about funding in Japan quickly.
Funding in Japan,
Sophie,
just one word.
She was talking about MEXT. I think it's the one you got.
And what about MEXT? Sorry, I can't see the question.
She said, I've noticed Japan doesn't provide funding from professors, RA or TA. Those that graduated with 2.2 and don't meet MEXT cutoff, what other options do you suggest for funding? I think she had 2.2.
To be honest with you, I can't categorize it. They don't provide other scholarships apart from MEXT. The only thing that they probably provide to people that are already in the country, because they don't have to pay your flight, they don't have to do all those other things. It's easier for them. Or maybe a student that is already in their lab that they know that is doing well but has financial issues, they can pick the student up and start place the person on monthly stipends. That aside, now when you talk about MEXT, I don't really know if that they have that criteria. I used to think MEXT was one scholarship that was open to every level, but let's assume they have that criteria of 2.1 or 2.2. One thing I always say is male professors, you just never can tell. I always say it in my videos, male professors. You're interested in a professor, mail the person. There are sometimes that they don't publicize. It's not like they don't publicize, but some scholarships for some weird reasons don't gain publicity like that. Now, if a professor finds you, fascinating, the professor just likes you, it happens. When for MEXT, right, one of the procedures, I don't know about COVID days, but before I came, there was like an official embassy send forth party in the official, the embassy in Abuja with their ambassador and all those things. To be honest with you, I felt like it was just MEXT that was the game thing. Let's say I met over 20 students there. At least 14, or at least 10 people came via professor. At least 10 people came via professor. I know Amara is even still in Hokkaido via a professor. I know another person that is still in Okayama via professor. So mail the professors, right? You could tell the person that, you're looking at MEXT. Sometimes when the person sees that you didn't get it, apart from MEXT, of just male professors. Yeah. Sometimes the university have a scholarship. Sometimes they have other things that they didn't publicize. If the person finds you fascinating, he could refer you before you know what's happening. Just try the option of mailing professors.
To add to that, when I came for my master's, there was a provision in my institution called a work-study program, and that was how my funding. So when you get in as a master's or PhD student, you have a number of hours you work in a week in your department as a lab assistant. You just find ways to occupy yourself, probably your professor on a particular research, and log your hours for the week. So that caters for your school, tuition, and your accommodation. Then your professor can place you on a stipend where you get monthly. So for me, and that wasn't even publicized on the university website. It was until I had a one-on-one talk, postgraduate student. They said, this is available. And there was even perks like you finish your master's, you are eligible to go. Once you submit your dissertation for external examination, you're eligible to travel for an international conference. So it was one of the ways to even attract postgraduates. I didn't get that on the university website. I didn't even get that from professors by reaching out to postgraduate students in that institution. And they told me like, this is available for you. This is available for you. So that was how I got that opportunity. I also want to add something from SC. One of the things I didn't really think about then was choosing the community service development you work with. Like Chioma said, what you do can really help you, probably where you are placed, your primary place of assignment. Also, your community development service can really help you a lot in like building your non-educational skills like community development, community service. What have you given back? Your volunteer work. So it can really help. You don't just find a CDS group that is just, let's just buy time and finish this NYSC thing. Volunteer, do a lot of volunteer work. And by the time you're writing to professors, you can quantify that volunteer work and say, okay, I've been able to do 1, 2, 3 for the community. And this has ended up in probably students getting, probably you tutored students, quantify what you've done and said, okay, I was able to assist the students to write a state exam and they passed well, you get. So don't waste your NYSC. That 1 year is a very good time to really accumulate a lot of non-tangible, what do I call it now? Things that will really beef your CV when you're writing to the professors. So I just wanted to add that on when Chioma mentioned about NYSC. Yes, Dr. Abayade, you wanted to say something?
No, I just want to say that you guys are quiet on the chat group and also quiet. We are just talking. We can't hear from you guys. So it will be really nice if you can just give us a feedback, or if you have questions, you can stop us along the line or raise your hand so that we would know that we are speaking to your needs. Do you understand?
Okay, people are talking.
Yeah.
Good.
If you have questions, you can, unmute yourself or raise your hand, and then our coordinator, Dr. Nikwe, would call upon you and can ask.
Okay, I want. Yeah. Okay, Chioma, continue.
Yeah, I just added to the chat box. Something came to my mind. Actually, another thing, MEX is quite broad, but the one most Nigerians or most people in around the world know more is the MEX embassy recommended. And I'm thinking if there will be anyone that has that criteria about degree of study or that you graduated, maybe it's the embassy recommended. But the university recommended, I don't think so, because that one, they have their protocol. And one of the most important things for my university especially was getting a professor and writing an exam. So it's that exam they used in selecting whether you graduated with first class upper or if there's nothing like that. I'm just exaggerating it, like first class upper, or you graduated with maybe fourth class up. They pretty much the more where it may come up or where it may help is when you're trying to sell yourself to a professor, because that's a requirement. Aside that, for the university recommended category, I really doubt that a particular degree will be needed. So if the embassy recommended route is not working for you, please by all means, look into the university recommended MEX. It's still same thing, same stipends, same sponsor is MEX, same benefits, flights, everything, same, just different people are selecting. Like the name implies, embassy recommended is the embassy selecting and recommending to the MEX, which is the government, Japanese government, while the university recommended is the different universities that are selecting for them and saying, oh, these are the people we want for our university. That's just the only difference.
Okay, we have a hand up. Val, I will unmute you now to ask your question.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much for your contributions. Is it Dr. Tony who was very particular about, Dr. Oluwaseyi? She was very particular about mental health and the degree to how we should focus on whosoever we are going to. So my quick question is, how can you give strategies or how one can manage in a situation where there is that tension that you're trying to talk about graduate school?
Okay. The first thing is have a solid network. People, your support group is very much important. For example, I started my PhD in 2007. And that was the trend my 2008 started. My parents came to visit, and my brother was doing his master's graduation. So my parents came some months later, and I sat down with my mom. They came to where I was, because it was different from where my younger brother was. And I was having a discussion with my mom, and I told her, I'm done. done, done, done. As in, I'm packing my bag and I'm going back home. And she was like, woman, you've spent more than 12 months. She started outlining everything to me. And she was like, do not allow anybody to derail you. I had that support system where I could voice out the pain in me, you know, and I could let it all out. And that day she talked, she prayed, and I wept. And, you know, so for 6 months into 2008, I was in depression, but I was going to the lab every day because I had to go to the lab because I had to finish. But after that particular day, after my parents left, I walked around campus that day and I'm like, Shay, this has to end now. You have to get back in. But you would find out that some people are a bit unfortunate that they don't have that kind of support system. And when they get, especially when in the cold climates, because I've known people who were in Canada in like 2006, 2007, that the guy ended up getting having mental issues, and they had to bring him back to Nigeria, and he was at Arrow for 3 years because he did not have a support system to vent out the things that were hurting. You know, somebody to sit down, even if it is only to listen. So those are one of the reasons why I tell young people that don't just go anywhere. Know who you are going to meet, because that person has the power to make or break you in different ways. And that is the truth. So your support system has to be solid. You know, people that I go and meet these people, they will lift me up no matter the pit I'm in. So those are the things, that's why I tell people now that because you want to leave Nigeria, don't just leave and say you want to go and be a master's or PhD. It is not beans. It is not yam. It is not easy. And that is it. No matter how intelligent you think you are. For me, at that point, as in my getting into postgrad, I told myself in my 3rd year of university, that's 1997, that I wanted to go into academia. So I knew the reason why I was going. So if I did not know my reason and I faced this kind of issues, how would I have ended up? And I didn't have a support system to remind me, because that was basically what they reminded me, that this you had said you wanted to do 11 years ago. So at this point, you cannot allow somebody to derail you because it is a vision you had 11 years ago. The Bible says, write the vision, make it plain. Look at where you are going to, because it is very, very important.
Thank you, Doc. Having a good support system is very important. For me, my husband was my support system, and he's still my support system. Sometimes I come back from the lab and I just cry my eyes out, like my experiments were not going well today. And it's as if I've just wasted a whole month. I don't know what is going on. And also having outlets. Don't just focus on academics alone. Probably you play ball, you go play tennis. Look for a sport that can fill that vacuum. I know a research professor in my institution that takes students out like once a month. They just go for a picnic. Everybody just forget about research and just have a good time and just relax and enjoy. I had a friend in the United States who literally, she and a friend, they left the PhD, joined Amazing Race, this program in the US. And fortunately for them, they won, but they said it was just the time they needed a break. They were just mentally drained and fatigued. And so please, strong support system is very, very important. Don't be an island on your own. Have friends that you can talk to, have family members that you can just call, even if it's just to cry and let it out. That will really help. Chima, anything to say to that?
You said it all. Just have a support. Both of you sound like you're married. So I know some people that are single here will be wondering. So yes. Single people. So let me just speak from the single perspective, right? You know, as much as possible, I'm a very family-oriented person. My family knows that it did not head for me in 1-2 days. check up on this. I mean, so as much as possible, please, keep close people close, even closer during your research. Call, rant. You always know that person that will just listen, will not interrupt you. If you feel like what you want is listening, sometimes it mustn't really be an academic person to understand. If you want an academic kind of circle, they will definitely try and make friends with at least one person in your lab, that is human and that kind of relates. So if you know anything about Japanese people are workaholics, real-time workaholics. And so when I first came to the lab, right, you hardly see someone complain that experiment went bad. You ask the person how was the experiment bad and they're smiling. So I had to make them understand that it's okay to not be happy that your experiment went south. It's okay to vent. If you ask me most time when they ask me, how is your experiment, I always reply, Mendokusai. Mendokusai means annoying. It's annoying. And my professor will hear that, he will laugh, because that's research for you. So keep family close, even if you're not married. Keep your family, your siblings, your loved ones close. It's not a time to shut down everybody from Nigeria because you're abroad now or something like that. Because the truth is those in this abroad are busy people. Everybody here is so busy. It's possible to live in this country and you don't even see somebody for the whole year. It's very, very possible with the weather. So now it's very cold, it's winter. So people are very selective about what takes them out because you don't want to get freezing cold. So community, like the both of you have said, but even if you're not married, please keep your family very close, loved ones very close, and be selective. Another thing I will say, please be selective about where you vent. Be very selective. It's painful to vent to someone and they tell you, is that all? Or you vent to someone, they tell you, is it not what people are praying for here? Or they tell you something like, oh yeah, come back now, let me go. Be very also selective about who you vent to. Some people just have that jackpot mentality. So when you're abroad, all is well with you, which is not the case. So be selective. For me, it's my siblings, my mom, my loved ones. I'm even selective with my dad because my dad is a bookworm. So he just feels like, his book. But my mom is more like, oh, okay, why don't you unplug? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? When things are started, she'll not tell him, you see, this girl was not fine, though. Things like that. So just be selective about, because sometimes if you vent to someone, the person tells you, oh yeah, come back, let me go. You just start doubting how you feel, like, oh, am I exaggerating? Oh, I'm not supposed to feel that. And that's how depression starts. That's how it starts. So in as much as we are saying have a community vent, please also know who you are venting to. Please be selective about who you're
I would
venting.
definitely agree with Choma. When I got here in 2007, there was an older man who also came in at that same time, and he told me he had spent 11 years on his PhD. His mistake was having issues with the professor at Unilag, then decided to go to UI to work with another professor. Unknowingly to him, the professor he met at UI was close friends with this professor at Unilag. So after he vented, I think the one at Unilag, at UI recorded that message and just sent it to the one at Unilag, and he spent 11 years and he had to start all over again here. So by the time he finished, it was over 50.
Wow.
It was over 50.
Wow.
So that is quite depressing, And he would sit and talk, and you'd be like, people are going through things. So let's not derail. That is during your postgrad. So things to expect during the postgrad. So everything is not about funding, but just know that, get yourself into that space where you know that anything can happen and you have to be prepared, whatever thing would happen during this process.
And there's a question here that said, I noticed as portrayed, Sophie said, I noticed as portrayed in the media that Asia's learning system is by cramming as opposed to here where you read and understand. Is this true? And has this influenced your learning pattern? I'm assuming this is directed at me since I'm the one in Asia. The thing is, you all know by now that media is not a whole story, because even what they portray about Africa is, gorilla, lion on the street, and zebra. We are not wearing clothes. So, there's danger of a single-sided story too when it comes to media. And that comes when you allow people that are not you to tell your stories. Right. So I'm not saying that they could not be that, but I'm just saying that probably the way it's exaggerated on the media is not exactly how it is. Now, even if at all it is the case, I'm even assuming this should be in the undergrad level, not in, I don't think cramming works in research. What are you cramming? What are you not cramming for research? Research is, we wake up today, you have planned, oh, I'm going to do this experiment. You don't know what is waiting for you. You don't know what is waiting for you. That experiment you think you want to do self, you will go there, it will cast, it will not even function. So there is nothing like cramming with research. When you reach there, what you see, you take. Some of these things like like you that is working with bioanalytical or bio this, I'm working with RNA. Some of these RNAs have mood swing. Is life something? Is the real life things? You can just stay and maybe they are fridge life. Maybe they've reached their fridge life, or they've reached their shelf life, or they've been there. Sometimes I'll prepare like example, maybe 1 micromolar of something. And I just used it yesterday or on Friday, and now it's weekend. I go on Monday and there's no signal from it. And I'm thinking, I used it on Friday. So cramming doesn't come in. I don't think cramming comes in with research when it comes to, grad work. No, I don't think. I don't think there's anybody that did cram, pour, and pass research. No, if there is anybody, please, I'm interested in that tutorial. Well, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Thank you, Chioma. Yeah, I want our panelists to speak to working with your PI. What has been the role? Like, probably you have a wrong PI, but it's the right funding, it's the right research. Should I walk away or should I align? Or you have the right PI, it's the wrong research and it has funding. So what should someone do in that situation?
I'm usually very skeptical about, this particular discussion, because, before I came to Japan, I probably did not have a deeper understanding of mental health. I didn't have as deep as understanding. So sometimes I can relate when people are saying, let the funding come first. When we reach there, we'll figure it out, something like that. In my head, I'm like, you probably don't have a deeper understanding of mental health in grad school. That's why. Now, another reason why I said I'm skeptical is I have a very amazing PI. I think I have one of the best PIs I've ever met in grad school. He's very interested in your life outside, the lab. He's very interested in, have you spoken with your mom? Have you spoken, like, if he sees me sitting down, and I'm a very, kind of person, I'm always very happy. I'm always asking everybody, how are you? Good morning. How is the experiment? So that part of me is something he probably hasn't seen in his lab. That's what diversity, does to schools too. So when he notices that I'm just seated in the seminar room and I'm just eating and minding my business, he's like, Chioma. And I'm like, yes. He's like, have you spoken to your family this week? And I'm like, he's like, call them. Even when I walked up to him, even in this pandemic, this August or July, when I was, nursing the idea of going back to Nigeria, I was so scared. The first time I mentioned, that was the first time I would have been traveling in 3 years. He was like, go. Please go. Do you need money? Do you need support? What do you need? Just go. You need it. So, but to be honest with you, even with that support, I know how some days are hard. I know how some days are really hard. It's not everything you cry running to your PI. Some days you leave the school. I'll leave the school by 2 a.m. I remember the day I stayed on campus till 4:03. Trains had stopped, everything. And it was a failed experiment. So there was no consolation safe that, okay, you stayed up till this time. I was trekking and crying and angry and, just so bitter. So I can imagine someone who has a bad PI. So I have a good PI, but I still have it tough on some days. So I always advise, as much as you can, please go for funding, but please also go for life, because that's life. People end their life in grad school. I read a story of a Nigerian that committed suicide, in, is it Germany, a country in, Europe? I'm not sure about the country. And I can tell it's pressure, stress, frustration and all those things. People will say it's better to cry in an SUV than to cry in Beatles. My dear, it's better not to cry at all. If you can avoid not to cry, please, by all means, don't cry. So please go for where there is funding, yes, as much as possible. Please also, be sensitive or strategic about the PI. It matters a lot. You don't want to have that thought of, oh, should I drop out or should I continue? There is also this stigma of returning back to Nigeria after you left or you didn't finish your program. It's more like, but other people are surviving, that kind of thing. So you're like, I don't want to go back. I'll rather just stay here, and then that's how. So please, by all means, choose a good PI if you can. So
there's a question from Adetoro. Is it possible to get my undergraduate research work published, and how can that be done? I will speak from experience. Yes. Before I left Nigeria, my undergraduate research was published because I had a very good supervisor, and I think it was also part of his PhD then. So I wasn't involved in the publication process then, although I did the experiment, I wrote the results and the discussion and everything. So he was the one who converted it to a paper and got it published. So Adetoro, it's very possible, but work with your undergrad supervisor because they are also on the paper. So I would say that would be the best route, to work with your undergrad supervisor, to talk to him and say, how can we get this paper published? Then he will guide you on the journey to publishing your first paper. So that's what I would like to say to that.
I would also like to add to that, like Dr. Toyin mentioned that it was part of his PhD work or something. Is that not what you said? Yes, for most of us undergrad, the people who were our supervisors used us final year students to do their PhD
yes.
lab work. So if you are assigned to a good person, the person would recognize that this student has put a lot of effort in getting this work done, and the person would pay you back by including your name as an author. But there are situations where the supervisor is selfish. So you have to have that at the back of your mind. So don't expect too much based on Dr. Toyin's experience. They are selfish and they would not recognize the work you've done. Even if you did 99% of the work, they would not. And they would not include you. And if you made the request while you are still a student and you've not graduated, you might not graduate. So you would have to be
graduate first, finish the research.
Graduate first and ask, that hello, sir, hello, ma, please, you would like to continue your career path as an academic, and I would appreciate if you would recognize me either as an author or in acknowledgement. So that you would have it there as an undergraduate, that this undergraduate student, we acknowledge he or she helped with some of the lab work or in data capturing or something. So that you can also include in your CV, as in they acknowledged you for what the aspect of your undergrad dissertation, so that's important. And with regards to the PI thing, like I mentioned, the Unilag UI situation, your life is the most important and is most important to you first. If you are being stressed out, even if there is funding there, take care of yourself first. And this is very important, because the guy that left Canada and spent 3 years in Arrow in Nigeria, can the guy continue a postgrad degree? No, it ended for him. And that's the truth. Do you understand? Even if the guy, I can't remember whether he finished the master's or not. Even if he finished the master's, right now, he's not using it for anything because his family is just patching his life up. So at the end of the day, you become useless to yourself and you become a liability to someone else. So if you get a PI, a mentor, a supervisor who is fantastic, good for you. Continue to make sure that that relationship, you fan it to flame, it does not die, and you don't tarnish that relationship in any way. And that is also important. But if you have a bad PI, try as much as possible just to do what you have to do and get out as fast as possible. If that is not possible, before you break down, either write a letter to the postgrad committee and request for a break. And you give them a reason why you're requesting for a break. Most postgrad committees in the West, they would acknowledge that because they understand the issue of mental health with postgrad students. So they would grant you a leave of absence where you go take care of yourself and you can come back. And you can pray that before you come back, your PI leaves. That they move it to somebody else who goes. But I found out that in some situations, in some universities, you can report a particular PI. If push comes to shove, you report and the university can assign you with a different person. So there are different scenarios in this thing. But the thing I want you to have at the back of your mind is that you first, everything else next.
Yeah, very true. For me, I would also like to come in from the aspect of also trying to know your PI. I've worked with different supervisors, and we, as students, like my undergrad, I've had students who had problem with the same supervisor I never had problem with. Probably it comes from not really understanding who you're working with, or probably just coming with this entitlement mentality, like you don't want to put work and you just expect them to give you things on a platter of gold or whatever. So understand who you're working with. For instance, my PhD supervisor is, I can say, is a workaholic as well. He's very disciplined. You see him sometimes is at work 7 a.m. and you go to him at 9 a.m. and he says, I've been here for 2 hours. So are you just waking up or what? So, and I had colleagues who had serious problem with him. And it came from not being able to let go of your ego, like whatever. At a point, I had a colleague who said, I think I just want to finish this PhD. Let me humble myself. So in my mind, I'm like, why didn't you humble yourself in the first place? You get? So understand who you are working with. Know their dynamics. Not every supervisor is the same. So understand, okay, this supervisor, he is hardworking. If you are lazy, then you won't be able to work together. So understand who you're working with. And also that also helps you to boost your interpersonal relation. You have to work with people because you will always find people who are difficult wherever you're going. Maybe you even get to work, you find bosses that are difficult, but I think there is a way to work with people. So use that to build your interpersonal relationship. But if it comes to the point where it's like this relationship is too toxic for you, I would advise, if it's to take a break, like Dr. said, write the school postgraduate committee that you just need a break for your mental health, then take a break. If you decide to leave, if it has come to that point, I would say leave because you come first. If you're dead or whatever, degree means nothing. The postgrad degree means nothing. So please take yourself, your mental health very seriously. It helps you a lot. Thank you. Do we have
to add to that?
Oh, okay.
Sorry. To add to that, right, it's very common for people to respect and, humble themselves for strict PIs. And then when you have a good PI, you tend to want to abuse access, or you want to, take the person for granted. So please, as much as possible, even when you have a good PI, like I said, I do, know your boundaries. Give the person's respect. Don't feel entitled to the person's time. Don't feel like, I can come to school anytime I want to come to school because this person will not. Don't take the person for granted. Don't do that, because these people watch. these people are watching you. It could come, the person may not say anything because he's naturally a nice person, but you will need this person. My professor had written a lot of recommendations to me, and there's even some he writes in Japanese. That this particular one he gave me after writing, and I was like, I need to know the meaning. And I used my translator, and it was just, I remember almost crying. He literally poured out his heart in this thing. Like, he poured out his heart, went as far as calling them on my behalf. That when it comes to Chioma, no, I vet, this is one international student. Now, it's not because of anything, because I know my boundaries with him. Because he's nice doesn't mean that I'll come in the morning and be like, touch him in his head or something. No. There are even some bodies I'm accountable to. Like, I have this body I'm accountable to in my school. I have a funding from them. So while I was in Nigeria and I came back, I was in my quarantine. They had sent a mail about a conference I was organizing, and I was supposed to invite professors from around the world, right? And they were like, oh, have you done this, have you done that? And because I wasn't in the lab, I couldn't really get my professor's feedback firsthand. And she goes, why don't you call him on the phone? And knowing Japan and knowing how phones don't ring out, having someone's number in this country is like privacy. Like, the person just trusts you enough. I think it's a Western thing. So I told her, with all due respect, ma, I don't call my PI just unnecessarily. I will mail him, and then if he doesn't reply, because I understand how they get lots of mail, I will wait till I resume school and he will reply me. And she was like, wow, you're the first. Like, so don't just, let's say you pick your phone, you call your PI by 11 p.m. Hello, sir, because the person is a nice person. No, people take nice people for granted. It's common to see people, respect the traditions of a strict lab. Then when they go to a nice lab, they abuse it. Like, there is a student in our lab. She's not from Nigeria, though. She's an international student. After how many months, we stopped seeing her. Everybody was worried. What's happening with this girl? What happened with this girl? Seminar presentation. We have seminars presentation every week. You present what you've been doing. They will put her. She won't show up. No explanation, nothing. Just for 2 years later or 1 year later, let me not exaggerate it, we were in a seminar and my professor got a call. It was this girl. And he picked. And then he came back and said, well, just to share that she called to say she's married to a Japanese and she has officially dropped out after 1 year. Because he's nice, will you do that to a strict person? So don't also abuse a nice person. Yeah. Dog that doesn't bark, that's how you overtouch the dog to start biting.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Our postgrad school is not just for research. You're also building yourself as a human being. You're building capacity. And also be a kind person. Be kind-hearted. Don't just go with the mentality to take and take and take and take. Also give back. Let people leave a place and let people say, oh, let them be able to say nice things about you. We've, just like Chioma shared, a supervisor, very good recommendation letter. And we've had people that their supervisor was their downfall, because by the time the person will recommend, will write the truth about who you have been to them, how you take your work, how you've portrayed yourself as a human being, and they will write it. And now you start saying this person is bad. You didn't position yourself well in the first place. So be a kind person, be kind-hearted, and really respect boundaries. Just because this person is nice doesn't mean you talk to them anyhow, have access to them anyhow. So that really, thank you, Chioma, for that. Do we have questions on the chat?
No questions.
Oh, okay.
Questions?
Okay, please, if you have a question, please raise your hand so that we unmute you. There's a point I wanted to say about, oh, sorry, Chioma.
I think there was a question I saw that you answered in the chat box. The person was asking as an undergrad, experience that the person can. Now, I didn't do this, but I'm so grateful for the Twitter community, the academic community on Twitter. They share a lot of nuggets. And one of the things that caught my attention one time when this question came up on Twitter was somebody said, you can, meet a PhD student or meet your a professor that, you know, there's always that nice professor in every department, approachable and all, and just willingly volunteer to attach yourself to the person. So it could be, you know, weekends, you just come around to know, oh, what experiment, even things like, oh, let me wash the flax, let me do this, let me do that. And that's an experience, but you don't have to now start writing your CV. I was washing flax. Everything is packaging. No, is it true? Everything is packaging. There is how sorry, Gary that they put in white nylon, and the Gary in ShopRite is still the same Gary. It's just that ShopRite people put their own and they staple it, put fine banner down, put it in barcode. When you now go do pim, you not think this Gary like this. It's Gary. So what I'm trying to say is there's how you will write it, right? It is not a lie. I am not one to tell you to lie. Please, I don't believe in that, because there will be time where you may need to prove it. But package it well, you know, present it well. Even food, that's how you will cook a sweet food, and you present it wrong. The eyes eats before the mouth. Present it very fine. Oh, I was an undergrad, you know, assistant or attachment to a professor. Something like that, you know. You don't need to start writing, I was washing flags, do something like that. So you can just volunteer yourself to a professor every weekend, or maybe after lectures during the day or during the evening. Some professors stay up late, I know. You go there, you say, oh, what experiment is going? Sometimes this person will now attach you to his PhD student just when he noticed that you're very interested. And that's an experience too on its own for undergrad that are interested in, you know, beefing up their
You know, one of the things I appreciate the industrial training in Nigeria for is that I didn't go to a traditional university. I went to University of Technology. So we did 6 months industrial training. And that 6 months, I was able to attach myself to Pharmadeco. And that was around the time sunscreen soda. I don't know if you guys know it. Sunscreen soda was coming up. And initially was 1999, sorry, was coming up, and initially was in a glass bottle, and I was attached to the R&D where they were trying to see if the same formulation could be put in a PET bottle, you know, and it would be stable. Remember that in a glass bottle, the level of carbonation is high. If you put that same level of carbonation in a PET bottle, it swells and it disfigures the shape of the bottle, and the bottle cannot stand. And, you know, and so it was one of those kind of experience I had. And it was also one of the first experiences I had with the fact that we could extract sweeteners from seeds, you know, in Nigeria. And, you know, all the way from Benin, this woman got big bags, you know, of this seed from, I think it's tomatococcus or something. And we're like told to break it open and see if you could do the extraction and all that. So for me, that 6 months, I was able to learn a lot about plants, a lot about quality control, a lot about micro, a lot about the production floor, you know, and every process that entails production from your raw material up to the final product release, you know, things like that. So even though it's a period where most students are stressed out because you don't get a good placement, but if you're able to get a good placement, even if they don't give you money, that experience is worth much more than they can ever give you. So IT, I would tell anybody, don't just go anywhere. Go to somewhere that is strategic in your mind, that is in line with what your plan for the future is.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. There's a question from Adetoro. Says, I've seen some tweets that one can apply for a PhD without having a master's degree. Is it advisable for one to proceed for PhD?
It depends on who you want to work with. Let me put it that way. So let me tell you several things. There are students that have first class, and maybe they've volunteered in some research labs and they've done some things, and who the PI is, the PI felt he could justify why the student should not do a master's and proceed to a PhD. It all depends on your PI and the power the PI has with the postgraduate school. It's one of several things. And the other thing is there are students that come in for a master's program, and the kind of research they carry out is so in-depth that by the time they are in their second year presenting their progress, the PI feels that this work this student has done is PhD worthy. They will just tell you, just spend an extra 1 year and you graduate with a PhD, you have a master's. All those scenarios have happened before. But it also depends on your PI, how well you've placed yourself with this particular PI and how much he strongly believes in your ability, So if you're a nasty person, even if your master's studies is PhD worthy, your attitude would deter you from being promoted to having a PhD. So there are so many scenarios that are possible. But the thing is, I can tell you that it is possible to not get a master's degree and your master's is being converted to a PhD. So many people have had that. I'm sure Dr. Twin can attest to that.
Yes, very true, very true. So it depends on your peer and the quality of work, what you're bringing to the table. Then they can say, no, this work is excellent. We just have to convert this work from a master's to a PhD. There's I wanted to mention. Oh, Chioma.
Yeah, as I was saying, it's even possible to people go direct to PhD. At least I know that USA, I think America, yeah, you can, even if you don't have a master's, you can actually get a direct PhD. To be honest, I got a direct PhD from Nigeria before I even came to Japan. So if the question was asking, maybe the person was just, do you advise that? I always say for scenarios like that, it's individual preference. You know yourself better. You know how some people would refuse double promotion and another person would take it. That's the same thing as skipping masters for PhD. Personally, for me, one of the reasons why I just felt like I needed masters first was I didn't feel as grounded as I think I should to skip masters. And that was why one other person may have been very grounded, felt very solid, felt very confident and proceeded. Now, another thing is depending on the country. I got the direct PhD not in America. The country's PhD is 3 years. So I was just thinking in my head, is 3 years really enough for someone that doesn't have a master's to publish, to do this, to do that, and get the PhD without having an extra year, because the scholarship ends at the 3rd year. So for America, most times it's not an issue because, it's 5 years, and by the time the 5 years is elapsed, you must have balanced out and all those things. So it depends on the country, depends on yourself, individual preferences, and you're just telling yourself the truth too. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Chioma. Thank you for that. Okay, there's something I wanted to mention before I forget. When we were talking about knowing your research field, what I wanted to say is for students, for undergrad who are finding it difficult to because of name tags, like Chioma said, this is the degree I studied. I don't know how I'm going to align it. There's this professor I saw I would really like to work with. I would say there's something we call SDG goals. So if you can also look at that, you can see where the future is at. That's one. Number two, if you are in chemistry, probably you belong to organizations like, for instance, for me, I belong to IFT, Institute of Food Technology, a global organization of food scientists. So you look at what they're projecting for you see the top 10 trends of the year, top 10 trends of the next 5 years. You see where the industry is going to, you see where research is going to. You can look at that and look at your current state and see the professor you've identified. How can I align myself with the projections in my industry? And now bring it into research and see how I can work with this person. So it's just you understanding the times and the season in what are the projections, and then align yourself. It's like riding on the wave that has just been set there in your industry and also in your particular field of research. So I would say do that. SDG goals, there's a lot of things on zero on climate change. There's so many things you can just look at and say, okay, I want to focus on this, because you know that in the next 10 years, it's still relevant. It's still being talked about. It's still being funded for research. So also look into that for getting your research field and how you want to align your current degree with your postgrad degree. I think our time is running out. Do we have any questions from
I saw a question that I don't think we answered from Hamed. Maybe someone answered it. Said, I mailed some prof recently with my research proposal, but yet to get a feedback. How long should I stay before getting back? Should I include that I am flexible to other options? So the truth is, for me, I feel like a considerable amount of time to send a reminder mail, maybe 1 week. 1 week, it's probably considered as an most times these people don't intentionally ignore you. It could be your mail came in and there's a lot of mails that come in scholarship windows. When scholarship windows open, these people get a whole lot of mails and it could get all junked up. So when you're sending a reminder mail, what I advise people to do is reply your first mail, so you don't give the person that punishment of going to go and search for your very first mail. So you reply your first mail, right? And then another thing I always say is, for some professors, I don't know, research proposal for some people is more like a boxing. So maybe the person has read your research proposal and it feels like, oh, this is not what I'm currently doing, and maybe that's the reason or something. But I would just advise sending a reminder mail and something like that 1 week later.
All right. There's someone in the house, a very good friend, Okwemi Lawal. I would just like him to chip in 1 or 2 things. A postdoctoral candidate from Canada. Okwemi, Dr. Lawal, can you unmute yourself and just say?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Well, I was and nice to be here. I was just telling Tony that I have my pen and my notepad, and I'm trying to jot everything I'm listening to here. Well, it's not actually a joke. I'm actually serious about it, because I think one of the things we miss is in grad school is like you have to be teachable and learn in the process, regardless of the position you are. And before, I wanted to say the panelists, they've done justice to everything, and kudos to Dr. Luashi, Dr. Chema. I don't know if that is right. And there was something I picked from her. She said RNA usually have mood swing. And I was just laughing. But I think it's just for people to have an idea that research is not a straight line. It's like a zigzag. The fact that you see a paper published doesn't mean that everything went the right way. There are always like ways to to come up with all those shortcomings. For me, there's nothing to add, because you've done justice to everything. But what I would just say is that about packaging, I've reviewed a lot of CVs. I've been involved in a lot of interviews for research assistants, and I realized that they just overpackage. And when you say overpackage, it means you're just lying on your CV. And one of the ways as Africans to set up yourself for mental problem is to claim you know something when actually you don't know. It becomes a problem, because people in the Western world, they take your words for it. Whatever you write in the CV, they take it as it is. So if you say that you know how to extract DNA, and in actual fact you don't know, when they say, of course they're going to teach you, obviously, because they will assume that you don't know anything. But even at the assumption, they will still want to assume that you have the residual knowledge of what you don't know. And I think that's one of the things I would like to say, that you have to be very careful with the packaging itself. Another thing is that I wouldn't want to start sharing my experience there because it's going to take time, but I just want to give you one of the vital things here that's actually worked for me. Well, I would say my BSc, MSc, PhD, I was extremely lucky to have a very supportive supervisors. And I remember that Dr. Oluwaseyi was saying something about your undergrad project, that if you want to publish it. Now, you don't assume, like, she's actually right. I'm 100% support of what she said, that you have to approach them. That is the very first thing you need to do. You have to approach them. And when you approach them, you also have to volunteer to come up with a draft of the manuscript. Because there's something I've observed, that especially when we are conversant with what is happening on Twitter, people are kind of entitled. People feel that as long as they carry out the work, they have to be on the list of the authors or the acknowledgement. But these people, they don't even know what you're thinking. So you have to approach them, tell them that you're ready. Of course, you have to do that after your study, like what the panelists have said, and offer to write a draft. That was what I did. And I got the idea because the senior ahead of us already told us that my supervisor back then, BSc, is very supportive. So you have to go to him, tell him what you want, and he's going to give you a format to write. And as soon as you write those format, then you're going to get it published. So don't assume that you're going to be on paper. Approach them and offer to help. And that is one. Another thing I wanted to say, because this is kind of a big problem on Twitter right now, that you would see undergraduates publishing their work without their supervisors. It's 100% wrong. Now, you don't have I would say that you don't have the copyright to the idea of your undergraduate study. It was, of course, you might have brought the topic, but it was your supervisor that polished it, and it was under his guidance that you carried out the research. So it's totally wrong for you to publish, except if he or she gives you the go ahead to do that. It is totally wrong to publish your work without the consent of your supervisor. I think we also have to take note of that. And apart from that, I think that's all. Other things are just that you have to prepare yourself for the grad school. It's more tense and more stressful than what the panelists have said. You have to be prepared mentally. And there was this tweet I sent sometimes ago that, if your idea of going outside to study is to japa, then you are setting yourself up for frustration. That's the point. You need to have the passion, and of course, like I always tell people that, going back to the chat, people were saying that they were kind of questioning their research experience. I always tell someone, what I tell people is that if you have all the research experience available for a PhD program, there's no point to doing PhD. PhD itself, it's training, you're there to learn. So the little experience you have, just put it on the CV. Leave it there, and if they are interested in what you have to do, then they will contract you for the work of the thing. And again, personalities are different, so you have to make sure that, okay, there's this thing I wanted to say that I've found also in Africans. When they leave the shores of the continent, they try to change that personality. As far as I know, Africans are naturally respectful. So you see them when they get to outside of the country, they start behaving like Westerners. And sincerely speaking, it's not going to work for you, because these people, that's their culture. So if you're trying to pretend to be a Westerner and trying to use that to relate to the supervisor, you're already setting yourself up for mental problem. Be yourself. If you are the kind of respectful person that's called everybody sir, 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 call them sirs, call them until they ask you to stop calling them that. Don't just assume that, okay, people just assume and start calling their supervisors first name. It's wrong. You have to call them in full first until they ask you to start calling them the first name. Those little things count. You don't know. There's still something under mental health they call microaggression. In some cases we don't know how to express that. But little microaggressions, they kind of cluster together to form a very big problem in the future. Respect them, be polite. And there's this very personal experience I want to share. When I was, again, I wanted to say that the experience we're sharing here, that, okay, you have to know your supervisor. Most of us here